without getting into great detail, I'm going to give you two stories really quick. Two stories that maybe will help you come up with ideas, because the key to being successful, whether it be in real estate or any other avenue, is to, number one, get creative. Never, ever, ever let someone tell you how you can't do things. Always search for the people who tell you how you can do things. And if no one's telling you, then get creative yourself. I remember a quick story back in 2008. I was just filming my first show, Income Property. You know, I'd done a couple seasons. The show was doing extremely well, and then the real estate market crashed. And Time Magazine put out an article saying, who should we blame for the real estate crash? And they named HGTV US at the time. They're like, HGTV US, and the president at the time of Scripps Networks that owns HGTV, they're like, it's his fault for, you know, putting out all these shows about real estate investing and get people's hopes up. And they put him on the list as one of the people to blame. They put him at like number 9 or 10, though. And they said the only reason why he's not at number 1 on the list, why we dropped him down to number 10, is because some of the programming is starting to change to give people real financial advice and address the realities of real estate. And they said shows like Income Property are going to be the turning point for this network. And the show Income Property was credited with kind of being the first show on HGTV to give people realistic advice to address the fact that, you know what, there's things you can do even with the house you have, even if it's renting out this crappy basement and doing some improvements and being, you know, strategic about it and logical about it. And, you know, in the face of all that adversity, this show I was working on kind of shone through, and it gave me a little bit of extra motivation to say, yeah, we are doing something that's practical. We're not as flashy as everyone else. You know, we're not, you know, doing multi-million-dollar beautiful renovations. We're doing practical renovations, and we're talking about cash flow and returns. And that's sort of the way you got to get your mind thinking sometimes. It's nice to have nice things, and if you want nice things, you got to work for it, but you got to get creative. So in 2008, 2009, I started investing in the US market a little heavier than I had been before, even though everyone said, you're crazy, you shouldn't do it, the market's crashing. I said, you know what, the numbers work, and I focused on the numbers. So I'm going to tell you a quick story about how I got really creative, something that worked out really well for me. In 2009, I was in Florida, and I was looking at properties as investments, but I was also looking for a personal property. I was like, wow, these prices are great. It'd be nice to have a place in Florida. I still have my place in Southwest Florida. We're coming up to 10 years now that my family and I have had it. We love it. But in the process, it was pretty interesting to see all these foreclosures and short sales and developers who were struggling. And I remember looking at some new construction with this one developer, Lennar. They're actually one of the largest developers in the United States, or in the world, in fact. And I went into the sales office, this brand new sales office. You know, it just gone up, it's grand opening, sales office now. And I'm walked right in. I said, I was the only person there, no other cars, just the two sales ladies' cars in the lot. And I said to the lady there, I'm like, why are you guys building more houses when, you know, all these other developments, even some of the ones you're working on, those ones aren't even sold? And she said, you know what? We're the largest builder in America. We have to keep building just to keep the lights on. And I thought, wow, that's pretty interesting. So you guys are building basically at a break even, maybe even at a loss. And I got into a good conversation, and I said, well, you know, what kind of incentives will you offer? And I kind of negotiated a little bit. Sort of, I was interested in the properties because they were great, but I wasn't, you know, aggressive. I wasn't, you know, super anxious to buy one. I had the ability to buy or not to buy, which is great leverage. And then as I was looking at the development, she was showing me the properties that they had available. I'm like, well, what about this section that's blacked out? She's like, that phase isn't open yet. And I said, well, what about all these lots here? She said, those are our model homes. They were building like 6 model homes right on water, right by the community center. And I'm like, wow, well, those are the best lots. You guys are building, you know, model homes on the best lots. I'm like, I want to buy one of those ones. And she said, okay, well, you can buy one. I said, oh. I said, you're going to sell the model homes? She said, she's like, I know that we can sell the model homes, but we need to be able to lease them back from you for a 5-year period. And I was like, wait a second, how does this work? And the way that worked out is that I was able to buy not only the property I wanted, but all of the model homes. And I bought them at a discounted price, like inventory housing price. Not only was I one of the first people to buy in there, so I got all kinds of incentives thrown in, I also bought in bulk, which got me reduced price. And because it was at the very beginning of phase one, it was the lowest pricing they had in the space. And I basically said, I will buy these units, I will hold them. And they rented them back. I think they were renting them for about $1,800 a month. And I was buying them for like $250,000. So basically, cost of financing and my insurance was about the rent. There wasn't much cash flow there, just a little bit. But here's what I really liked is they were renting them back. They were maintaining them. There were no HOA fees. There was no property management fees. In fact, there were no tenants, which was amazing. They kept them in perfect condition at all times. And once the 5-year term was done, I had them right in the contract. They were going to redo all the landscaping. They were going to put in driveways. They had to remove a fence that they had to kind of block them all in. I negotiated all these things in. And basically I said to the sales lady, I said, once the development is done, if you have any buyers, I'll give you 1.5% commission on the sale of all of these models at the end. Now, legally, she wasn't allowed to sell my properties until the whole development was done. And the development ended up being completed in 3 years. And she had a waiting list of people, all who wanted to buy those 5 properties because they were the best lots, closest to the front, closest to the community center with all the upgrades, basically in perfect condition. And I was able to make about $150,000 in appreciation on each one and a little bit of cash flow over the years with no maintenance fees, no hassles, no calls from any tenants, none of that jazz. It was all pretty much turnkey. And I ended up doing this in several other developments. I still do it to this day. It's kind of a little niche thing that I like. It's, best properties in perfect condition with no tenants, a rental property with no tenants. It's pretty great. So that's me getting creative. And that's me telling you guys, you got to get creative. When you see a problem, be the solution person. And that's really how business works and how opportunity works. And if you can do that in real estate, fantastic. So let me spin this to a little bit of a take home that you can use yourself, because I know not all of you are going to new developers and buying new properties, even though I also did this in Toronto, by the way, in 2008. The Toronto market had a bit of a hiccup and developers were pretty nervous. I was negotiating in all kinds of things at that time as well. So whenever you see a market under pressure, don't be deterred, be excited, find solutions, make the cash flow work. Anyway, I don't really share this story too often. I just thought I would share it tonight. Something in the comments sparked a reaction for me. But it's a bit of a secret technique that I've been using now for almost 10 years, which is buying direct from the developers, what they call inventory homes as the model homes, with a lease back to the developer, which is the best person to lease it back to. And you end up with the best houses at the end after they've basically sold out the entire development. And you got to think people who are buying at the back of these developments are paying more for than what you bought yours for. You can sell them for a premium. Something to think about. I see all these new developments going in all over the US, even in Canada, even though the demand is slightly higher in some Canadian cities. If you're in Alberta, for instance, or you're in the Maritimes, some of these developers can have some pretty thin margins that they're working with, and selling 5 inventory homes right off the bat can be a huge incentive